We are excited to welcome the couple behind family-owned winery in Healdsburg, Reeve Wines, Noah Dorrance, and Kelly Dorrance. They have created an intimate winery experience, a passionate following of members known as the Band of Reeve, and are receiving accolades from critics like Antonio Galloni, who says, "I was blown away by the wines I tasted this year at Reeve with Noah Dorrance. His Pinots in particular are superb for the way they balance richness, energy, and savoriness." Kelly and Noah have gotten creative during this time of crisis to nurture their relationships with their customers directly, help support the staff at restaurants, and stay connected with their community.
All right. That was quite an intro.
I know. Chris and I'm switching it out. He actually had Ann and I. Ann and I have an affinity for people who integrate their work and life and pursue their passion, and Noah and Kelly represent that lifestyle. Woo!
All right.
Now, before we get in,
that's great,
to the important stuff.
All right. Well, are
you guys ready? We're going to pour some wine.
Can we at least pour some wine and toast each other before you just jump right into your favorite segment?
Sorry. You're right. Just so exciting.
Cheers, guys. And cheers to Alec, Ariel, Scott, others in the audience. How you guys doing tonight? Hope you're enjoying a glass of something nice too.
That's right, Doug.
Yeah.
All right. So we got a bunch of people on here, but let's ignore all the people. Let's get down to you two. We're going to do a fun little experiment that we've enjoyed doing, and more importantly, the audience has enjoyed. So you're just going to have to play it with me. I think of us as the J-Lo and A-Rod of entrepreneurship and small businesses. I think of you guys as the J-Lo and A-Rod of wineries. Just saying it. And they're frozen. Do you think
which one's
It's really up to you. Chris did say that A-Rod had gotten fat. So it's a dangerous comment. Okay, that was a dangerous question there, Noah. Thank you. So what you guys are going to do is close your eyes like this. This is a trust game.
Uh-oh.
Both of you are going to go like this. All right. And then I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, very easy ones. And you're just going to point to which of you can open your eyes for a second to show. Be like this. It'll be like, which of you is this? And you just point to the person or point to yourself. Okay?
I'm going to do this one-handed so I can continue to drink.
Yeah, one hand. This is like a 30-second thing. Don't worry. All right. Drink a drink. Close your eyes. First question. Who initiated the first kiss?
Oh.
Okay. Who apologizes first? Who's the funny one? Who's more romantic? Who picks the radio station?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
Who's the most patient? Who's the better cook? Who said I love you first? Who takes longer to get ready? Who's grumpier in the morning? Who's more stubborn? Who's the bigger baby when they're sick?
Wait, what?
Who's the bigger baby when they're sick? Who loses their cool first? Who's the pickiest eater? Who's the social butterfly? All right. Now you'll have to watch to find out what your answers were.
I know.
That's
This is
fun.
like the
I would say
the newlywed game.
I would say more than 50% in agreement.
What does it? Those odds aren't very good when you've been married 16 years.
probably
It was actually 70 or 80%.
Yeah, it was pretty good. You guys had the same. You're aligned.
We feel confident in
there's no right answer. It's about having the same answer. Then
sometimes it's about having a different answer. Really, to think about
There's
it.
Only
Don't worry, Kelly.
Like, we're equally not romantic, so like,
yeah.
Both.
Surprisingly enough, with A-Rod and J-Lo, they had to fight it out because they're both sort of Latin.
Yeah.
Sort of.
Did you see them do this exercise?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
And then
and now it's become Anne's thing. She does it on episodes of LPTV. She did it with us.
All right, let's get into the meat of this while we're all here.
Yeah. So we wanted to kind of start at the beginning and get to know the two of you and how you connected with wine initially. We have viewers from sort of all walks of life and all relationships with wine. So we like to start at the beginning. And I think in particular, sometimes people feel like it's hard to access wine, or I don't know where to start. So I thought it would be interesting to sort of start at your starting point and understand, where you got started. So.
Well, I have a starting point where pretty much anyone could have the same starting point. I'm from Springfield, Missouri, which is in the exact middle of the United States. And I was about 18 years old, and I was driving down the street, and I just thought to myself, I think I'm going to get a wine. And I pulled over into a Barnes & Noble back when there were still Barnes & Nobles on every street corner. And I went in and bought Wine for Dummies. So that was the first thing I did. And I went home and I just started reading it, and got so excited by all the things I was reading, and the faraway places and the tradition and the history and all these interesting things that I never knew. Go get wine, and I went to the grocery, a couple of wine, including I bought the Wicker, and I opened those and I looked in Wine for Dummies, and I got Chianti. It's made from Sangiovese. It's from Tuscany, and I was just hooked from that point on. Completely and totally hooked.
I didn't know those things were called fiascos.
Fiascos, yeah.
I like that.
And and that began a lifetime of wine.
Even Kelly's learning.
I know. Oh yeah. Me learning about wine is no big surprise.
That's true.
Well, I think that's also a really interesting thing, is how you're always learning, right? So from the moment that you're drinking Wine for Dummies, but even today, you guys are always kind of exploring and learning, and you want to sort of share that with folks. We have a lot of folks in our audience who maybe are just on their early discovery point of wine. And it's an intimidating time, actually. And so what's your recommendation on how to sort of learn and get excited about that?
Well, I think one of the things to learn is that, as you said, it is a thing. It's like, music. It's endless. It's limitless. There's so many different things to know and to learn. Nobody knows everything about it. And that's what makes it really exciting as a hobby or just something to learn about. And so don't get intimidated by the vastness of it. It's even the people that know everything about it don't know everything about it. So don't worry about that. The only thing you really have to do is follow kind of your passion and what you're into. And again, to use kind of the music analogy, like, you don't have to like every kind of music in the world. You just have to find some kinds that you like and just kind of start going down that path. And that one artist that you find will lead you to 5 other artists that are sort of similar, and they'll lead you to 5 other people. And that's the same thing with wine. If you find out that you like Chianti, then have some Chiantis and taste them and think about them. And I think that's probably the second biggest point about any type of appreciation of anything, is just to pay attention to you don't have to know anything special about it. Just pay attention to the way it makes you feel, to the way it feels in your mouth, to the way the things it brings to mind. If you just if everyone who wanted to get into wine, if they would just take a second when they had some wine and just use their basic senses, what does it look like? What does it smell like? Is it big or is it small?
This is a perfect lead in, Noah. No, it's a perfect lead in. Take us through a tasting. You and I we're all four drinking the same wine. Our viewers.
They're an 18. We're a 17.
Okay, yeah, we're actually, we have the Marama 17. But if we were visiting Reeve and we were fortunate enough that one of the two of you were doing our tasting, and we're coming across wine, or how would you walk us through it? What would you encourage us to do? Just take us through that experience.
Yeah, well, there's really kind of four main things to look at. One is just to look at the wine and see what it looks like. Is it translucent? Is it bright? Is it dull? Is it red? Is it crimson? Is it straw color? Is it bright orange? It's just basic. What does it look like?
Right.
And the second thing is, what does it smell like? And you just really kind of end up going through your senses here, and then taking a moment. Does it smell like? And you see people. I have just now, just habitual. I just spin my water at this point. But the reason people do that is because it releases aromas in the wine. It makes it easier to smell. And the next thing would just be to smell it and see what it smells like. Wines can have one of the beautiful things is they have this whole range of different flavors and aromas that can be fruit oriented or non-fruit oriented. They can be, like dirt or like trees or like salt air from the beach, or any combination of those things. So just, again, and you don't have to know like all the terms, and you don't have to be able to have an encyclopedic knowledge of like boysenberries and quinceberries. And
I'm going to interject for a sec. I think that's something that we see a lot at the tasting room is people who are intimidated about how to taste. And you taste however you taste. Like if you do want to really like learn about the wine, you can do all these things, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with just going straight into the glass and taking a big chug. Because I think for most people, we all like things in different ways. And I think it's okay. I am, unlike Noah, who is very fine tuned with wine and winemaking. And I'm kind of not new to this because we've been doing it a while, but he brought me in and I've always appreciated it, but I will never know all the nuances. My brain does not work the way his does, but I very much appreciate it. And I think, as with a lot of things that are things that we're meant to enjoy, it's a personal experience. So when people go in the tasting room, sometimes they don't want to talk about the wine because they're scared they're going to say the wrong thing. And that is absolutely never true, because there is a way you're reacting to it. There's a way you're tasting it. It could be something totally different than what we see or feel. And that's kind of one of the beauties of the products, for sure.
And it's one of the ways that you will eventually expand your knowledge is just by trusting your perceptions, to say like, oh, I think it smells like fruit. Like, okay, that's great. You don't have to even get more specific than that. You think it smells fruity and that's what you perceived. And you took a second to think about that. A lot of people will just drink wine, which is totally fine too, to just drink the wine. But if you want to take a step forward, all you have to do is just pay attention for 10 seconds and just say, it smells like fruit. You've registered that.
Go ahead.
I think the comparison, interestingly enough, to music is a very good one. And it sort of ties in with what Kelly was saying is, I don't know, sometimes in partnerships, like I will never be the music aficionado, right? But I have pretty decent taste in music and I know I can dance. But, and that's kind of what it takes, right? And some people, and I also think about sports analogies, right? And, there are guys who know all of the stats on sports people, and people's brains work in different ways. And if you think about it, you're like somebody who's a winemaker or a somm who is able to have this like extended collection of information and be able to organize that in their brain is a very unique skill.
Right.
And just because those of us who love music don't know all about music or don't actually make the music, we're part of that audience. And so I love the fact that Kelly, I mean, I would probably argue you have a lot better knowledge and experience and taste and ability to talk about it than most, but I love the fact that you're still vulnerable in your knowledge level as you compare that in fact, like, we're all on the journey together, and the winemaker doesn't benefit if they're only sort of culty and only in their own space. They need all of us to sort of love the exploration of it. And I think it's important that we're all around it, and it's about that discovery and appreciation, and however that comes out. And by the way, right now, I know you did make the comment that we should all just be drinking, and you know, from time to time, we are just opening up whatever bottle happens to be in the fridge and having a little guzzle because we need to. But for the most part right now, you know, we're really cautious and think about how we spend money on things like music, on albums, on whether or not we're having a streaming service. You know, even if your budget is small, maybe conserve a bit of that budget, and when you're actually drinking, be conscious of what you're drinking, not worrying about how much we're drinking. There's always, you know, you can always have a ranch water in between if you want to get wasted. But like, the idea is that have that moment, maybe do a little bit of appreciation that's helpful. And you don't have to be an expert to appreciate, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
100%.
Did you
It's just like music. You don't have to know anything about it.
No, I think that was.
Yeah, I also think Noah, something I love about him as a winemaker, because he is very knowledgeable, but it's he says about wine, it's the more I know, the less I know kind of thing. And it's also a very relationship-based industry. You know, we source from some of the best vineyards because it took us years to gain the trust of those farmers and those growers, and to find the best, you know, people helping us make the wine. And there's a lot of beauty in that too, is you know, taking the ego out of it and like letting people come in and help, which is I think that's been a huge part of our success, is knowing who to reach out to and who to lean on and who to ask to help and to learn. So that's how, when, you know, people are always shocked when they're like, what, you're from Missouri and you don't, you know, you didn't get a degree in enology, what is it called?
Good job. You did.
I was going to say that earlier, and I was like, I don't know the word.
It's like questions like that. Like, actually, no. Like, brewers, cool person, you seem to be well connected, and, you know, how do we do this? How do we make this happen? And that was, you know, something we've been working on for how many years now? 13?
Yeah, 13 or 14.
13 years. Yeah.
Longer than that.
All right, so we're getting into your entrepreneurial journey, which is exactly where we wanted to go. And my bridge between the two will be that from the tasting room, you have to, if you're there and you are new to wine, you have to kind of get over your imposter syndrome and not worry, you know, not take yourself too seriously, not worry that, you know, you don't know everything. That's not the point. And that's sort of the same thing entrepreneurs have to get over, right? Entrepreneurs have to get over their imposter syndrome. Like, you know, getting out there and saying, hey, we're going to make wine. Like, that's a bold step, right? You literally have to start somewhere and say, hey, we're creating a wine. We're creating, we're creating a new brand. We're building this as a company, right? It's a company, it's a livelihood. So give us a little of that origin story, just as sort of the setting, and then we can take it from there.
Yeah, I think there's a few different stories embedded in there on our wine journey. The first is that I actually didn't used to work. I worked in wine for a while around college when I got into wine, and then I worked for a startup internet company for a while. And ultimately, we ended up in San Francisco, and the company that I was working for was kind of falling apart. And Kelly really encouraged me, because I'd always been really passionate about wine, to try to get a job at a winery. And so I actually got a job a temporary job.
I was like, just do this until we figure things out.
And then I started working at a yeah, here we are. that was about 15 years ago, I guess. But
you are an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I've kind of always
right.
worked in startup type environments. And so the winery that I ended up working for was like a startup. And then, in kind of true startup fashion, that startup ended up being an incubator for my own wine brand that became Banshee Wine, which I started with two friends a little over 10 years ago, which in itself was another startup. And we started like many startups by maxing out our credit cards and kind of jumping off the bridge and with no safety net below. And fortunately, it really kind of took off, and we grew quickly.
That prepared you for this time.
Yeah. Yes. Well, interestingly enough, when we started Banshee, it was right out of the recession. So we kind of started in 08, 09. And just like I know happened right now, we were kind of the opportunists that took advantage of everything that had just fallen apart. There were cheap grapes, there was cheap wine, everything was cheap, and we kind of were able to exploit that and get started in an environment that we weren't able to do 3 or 4 years before. So we just wouldn't have had the money, and the economics just weren't right for somebody that was starting up without a lot of capital. But it allowed us to get started, and we kind of rode that whole next wave of the next 10 years. And we were able to sell Banshee a few years ago. Now with Reeve, we actually started it as kind of a side family project. Reeve is our son's name, and as you guys know, and started it with a little bit of a different mindset, which was not to get really big, but it was more to explore some of the things we were interested in wine-wise, to have a long-lasting family business that was sustainable, and that was something we would do, for the rest of our lives.
I have a quick question about the name.
Yes.
When you named Reeve, were you like, ooh, that was going to be our winery name? We'll name our winery that anyway? Or was it that because you just liked him so much that you were like, we should name the winery after him?
I have a story for this, and it relates to music. We had Remy, our daughter. She was only 6 months old when I got pregnant with Reeve. And we had some boy names in our back pocket: Jack, Leo, and Eli. And that's what I thought we were going to pull from. And one day we were commuting to work together and talking about names, and we started just talking. It wasn't even about what to name Reeve, because we thought it was going to be Jack, Leo, or Eli. And we just started talking about rock star names. And this is when we were definitely like at Banshee, even considering like another winery. And we started talking about Rivers Cuomo, who's the lead singer of Weezer. And we talked about River Phoenix. And then Noah just out of nowhere was like, what about the name Reeve? And I was like, well, that's not anybody's name. Like, it's a last name. And he's like, I think it's pretty cool. And I was like, it's not a name. But I couldn't shake it. And then I was worried because I didn't want Remy and Reeve to match so much. I was like, we're not going to name all of our kids our names or whatever. That wasn't, but it wouldn't.
We do that.
We do that. They're all H's.
all ages. And so it just stuck, and it was kind of kismet. You're like, all right. And then when we ended up needing to select a name for a winery, it was very difficult because of all the copyrights, and there's a bazillion wineries and a bazillion trademarks. And
I would say something different about a winery that's different from almost any other type of business is that it ends up being a very personal thing. And it's harder to come up with just like a catchy or funny name and know that you're going to be living with this and you're going to be making this in a way like this piece of art that is very reflective of who you are as a person. You know, you can't just name it something crazy. It's got to be something sort of personal and meaningful, I think. And then at that time we were very, very busy with Banshee as well. I always sort of joke that I think if we would have had more mind space, we probably would have come up with something different. But since we already liked the name Reeve, we already named something Reeve. We're like, let's just use that again.
And we couldn't name it Remy just so everyone doesn't think he's like the favorite, because her name's trademarked by Remy Martin, the cognac company.
Right. I don't know if anybody can see that, but Remy gets a nice shout out on the label.
On the label. So she hasn't been
I don't know about you guys, but I don't think we could imagine it being any other thing but Reeve. And one of the things that's so great about it beyond the wine is actually, I think it does have a really interesting brand affinity and look that is unique in the industry, and we've talked about it. We've talked about sort of being creative within constraints, right? And sort of the idea of like, do you have the fancy box? Do you have these things? And there's something about it that is just so textural in the way you guys have pulled everything together, the tasting room experience, the sort of very, very high touch that makes it very sticky, right? And so I guess maybe if you had thought a bit more, you could have come up with a different brand or a different idea, but it feels like it has been a very organic evolution to become what it is today from the outside.
Well, and not just
that's a true outsider's perspective.
It's not just it's great wine, but there's more to it than that. In that it's a great brand, and you guys appear. We've never really talked about this, but you appear to have been very conscious of that. You know, from all of the things that you might do in a branding campaign in a business. You know, the typeface, the sort of photography, the way you present the brand, the experience. You think a lot about that element of it as well, right?
Sounds like you're agreeing with me.
I'm ansplaining you.
I think he just ansplained Anne.
Yeah, a lot of that is Kelly. She's very.
Sometimes he tunes out, guys. He's like, I listen to her all the time.
I think with the brand, and I love you guys for saying that because it does mean a lot, and I feel like it can always be improved upon. However, I think for us, our filter is authenticity, and it's just who we are. Like, there's no, we don't have a big budget to do some of the things we want to do with packaging and all that stuff. And I've talked to you about this, Anne, specifically, and you're like, I love your like HP printer menus. And I'm like, what? No, I love your hand stamped boxes. But, for us, it's our baseline is us and our expectations and what do we react to? What do we like as consumers? And the fact that this is a small family brand that is incredibly handmade, and on all aspects, it is something that's important to us to reflect. I think there's so many wineries and wine brands that come across as small family owned, but they're actually owned by a big conglomerate. And we are not, and we have to work that much harder. And I think a lot of people now know and feel it, if it's real or if it's not. And I think people crave authenticity. I think people crave handmade and small and family owned. And
I think it's sort of our secret one too, is that It's actually the owners putting that level of passion into all the little things, you know, all the things, from the way that the pens are set on the menus when you sit down to do a tasting, to, you know, how many chairs are out on the patio, to the lighting. Every single thing we've thought about and we keep thinking about. And I think when you have that type of experience, be it at a restaurant or when you engage with any type of brand, there's just something indelible that you can tell that somebody who really cares was involved in the way all the things are. There's just a difference.
And that can be like why I love dive bars. Like, you can go to a sexy, swanky, like champagne bar and appreciate it and love it, but then you can go to the Forestville Club and just be like, this is the best, because it is the real deal. And that's just something that, like, we'll never lose, because it's just ingrained in who we are.
Well, and I think when you combine great experiences that are true, and we used to say this, is that brand comes from the inside. And I think about that. I used to think about that even like in the Google days when like literally they hated marketing like Banshee. But the reality was that we exuded whatever that happened to be. You exude the brand, and that can be a terrible brand, by the way, because of the way the inside actually operates. And oftentimes that's what you end up seeing. It doesn't matter how many pretty pictures or how much control you have on the outside. If the brand at the inside and the product at the inside is not pure and good and wonderful, and this is not wine, this is just product in general, right? It is the promise that you are delivering when you're presenting the brand. And so that starts from the beginning. That starts from the founders. And then it starts from the product that you deliver in the market, and how good or bad or value or whatever product you want to have. Like, what is that category you want to be in? And then it's about how do you actually deliver on that promise. And when you're a brand, your brand is about the promise that you deliver. And yes, branding can have some nice boxes, and that's wonderful too. Kelly, I hope for you to have great success, that you can have great boxes, just like I hope for all of our Launchpad locations that we can spend money on swanky art. Someday it will happen. Not in 2020, I can guarantee you that. Let's just aim for Wi-Fi, guys, and to still have our spaces. But nonetheless, like, I think that brand starts at the core, and it starts from you, and you're exactly right. You are feeding, and I think that's the lesson that we could take away here, guys, for entrepreneurs, is whether you're selling wine or you're building a product, it starts from that core value from the inside. It's organic, it builds out. And it's how you create and design the experience and the product that you want to deliver. And if you're proud of it, then other people, and you care about your customer, and then your customers are going to love it too.
Yeah.
Should we get into the wine?
Well, yeah, now.
Oh, I'll give it back to you. Sorry.
Every segment has then a wine break, right?
Wine break.
I like that.
All right. So, yeah, exactly. So,
wine time.
Let's expand out. Let's expand out of this wine per se, but take people on other parts of the journey, all aspects of how you get to know wine, whether in a restaurant or in a, where you buy wine. I
literally was hoping he was going to tell us about this wine. What should I be tasting here first?
Oh, well, yeah, we didn't finish that part. Let's finish that part.
Let's finish that. Okay. Tell me what I'm tasting here, Noah.
Yeah.
So this wine, and we actually have the 16, you guys have the 17, we also have the 18.
Yeah.
It's a wine called Miramà, and it's a Pinot Noir from the Sonoma Coast. So Pinot Noir is a type of grape. And the Sonoma Coast is an area, it's where we're not quite there, but it's everything basically west of the 101 between Healdsburg and Petaluma. Right.
So we're there.
You're there. Yeah, you're technically in the Sonoma Coast.
By the way, you're swarming with fruit flies.
Yeah.
As long as they're not mosquitoes.
And Pinot Noir is one of the wines we make a lot of We make a lot of different Pinot Noirs from different vineyards. Even within the Sonoma Coast, we have multiple different Pinot Noirs. And Pinot Noir, I mean, if you've ever seen the movie Sideways, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it, and now that people are spending a lot of time at home, you should watch Sideways if you haven't seen it. But the character Miles in the movie goes on and on about how the beauty of Pinot Noir, because it's sort of temperamental and sort of difficult, and it can be sort of innocuous, it can be overdone, and it doesn't kind of appeal to everyone, but it's that thing when you get it just perfect, it's kind of a mind-bending experience. It's very soulful and transformative in a way. And so a lot of people kind of chase that with Pinot Noir. Like Cabernet isn't that way. You can get, rich, dark Cabernet and throw some new oak at it, and it tastes like 50% of all the Napa Cabs you've ever had, more or less. Pinot is a very ethereal, nuanced grape, or it can be. So that's kind of the thing we're chasing with Pinot Noir. Part of the thing that makes Pinot Noir difficult to make like that is it requires very specific temperature. If it's too warm, it gets overbaked and it just tastes like kind of like regular red wine. And so the Sonoma Coast is perfect because it gets warm enough in the summer, but there's cool ocean breezes, as you know. They come in kind of every afternoon. Fog comes in. You have 85-degree days in the middle of the summer, and then all of a sudden it's 55 degrees or 57 degrees at night. And that pretty much happens every day, where you just get that automatic cool down every night. And that lasts till, whenever it is, 9, 10, 11 in the morning, and that kind of blows off and you get the sunshine for a few hours. What that does for a grape like Pinot Noir, it's very thin-skinned. And so it requires kind of a long, elongated growing season that doesn't get too hot, that stays cool at night to keep it fresh. And what you end up with is kind of an elegance and a prettiness and depth of flavor and pretty aromatics. But there are very few places on earth that have that exact climate for Pinot Noir. And that doesn't even get into soil and other things like rainfall, soil. But the Sonoma Coast, influenced by the ocean, is one of those areas. And so it's an area that I've made Pinot in for almost 15 years.
Can I tell you about the name real quick? Miramar was our favorite Chinese restaurant that we lived in Paris a little bit, and that was the name of it.
You did?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And there's what else? It was like what
everything you have is personal. Even Kelly, you said the word Kismet earlier in the show night, and I know you have a Kismet Pinot.
Well, yeah, we have a Kismet Wine Club, which is kind of our smallest production club.
Okay.
We do have a Kaiser Pinot that is in the Kismet Club. So yeah, we did. Our wine clubs are named Wayfair and Kismet, and then we have a Mas Alta, which is super special. But yeah, it's just fun to kind of.
We haven't even been invited into the Mas Alta.
Let me tell you.
Someday.
But it's some of our wines, some of our blends, we come up with names for. We have the Miramar. How many vineyards is in Miramar?
3.
And then we have Bosco Sangiovese, which is named after our dearly beloved puppy, Bosco. Rest in peace. And Prism is a name we use for Riesling. Is it raining?
No, just birds.
Just birds. Hot air balloon. Prism, Riesling, Rhoda is one of our best-selling Pinot Noirs. It's Anderson Valley. It's named after.
What is the name? What does Rhoda come from?
So it's named after Walt and Rhoda Anderson. Were the founder. Well, not the first people to live in Anderson Valley, but the first settlers, and they were from Missouri, which we are from Missouri.
They came out in
cool.
covered wagon from Missouri in the 1840s for the gold rush, and got got to the gold rush and it was very chaotic, and decided to keep moving west, and they settled in the Anderson Valley, or what's now known as the Anderson Valley.
So Rhoda Anderson was the namesake for Rhoda. So yeah.
Wow, you guys are like the modern day Rhoda Anderson and her husband, whoever that was.
Wes. Wait, not Wes.
Walter.
I love Wes Anderson though.
Rhoda and Walt.
Harnan.
Well, we do have a quote in the little seal on here too that's from another famous Missourian, Mark Twain. And we only have a fragment of it that says "on a tilt," but the quote was, "America is built on a tilt, and everything loose slides to California." So we've kind of adopted that as our motto.
You two would be.
Yeah,
you're loose. You're in California.
It does end up that way. Yeah. Well, no, that was the description of the wine as you were sort of going through it was sort of lyrical. It was sort of like going through a great record or great song. You sort of it's interesting that wine sort of can take you to that point where there's sort of a creative energy that gets unleashed as you're thinking about it, as you're experiencing it.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the thing that captivated about wine is just, it's more like this intellectual, emotional thing that happens when I start thinking about it, and when I start thinking about the differences between this wine and that wine. And it can also, like music, it can also let your mind wander, and you start thinking about wine, and then pretty soon you're thinking about, the bread that your grandma baked, when you were 5, and you just start remembering things. And I think it's really not that much of a coincidence, because taste and aroma are some of our deepest memories, and they're some of our deepest triggers of emotions and memories. And I think wine kind of has the ability to unlock that. And along with, the effects of alcohol, it relaxes you. It does allow your mind to wander. It does shift your mindset and your being for a moment. So when all those things happen, if you get that experience where you start, remembering your grandma and you feel great, and you're thinking about where this wine came from and how that specific growing season yielded this thing. I mean, at that full experience, you got a good bottle of wine.
Yeah.
We could probably use a little of that right now, right?
Yeah.
I am having a little bit of that.
No, I know. Just like a little, especially where we are in this crazy time. It's nice to actually take your focus. It's even nice just to have this conversation, right? Take our focus off sort of what's going on in everybody's lives and our lives. And
for sure.
Yeah. I know we're all getting like a little bit of like a private everyone's getting their own private tasting with Noah and Kelly. It's kind of cool. We're actually getting to know, it's like the liner notes for the album.
I was just thinking too, as since everybody has different wines, and you were asking me about, wine for people that they don't know that much. They're at the beginning of their journey. It's just kind of taking a huge step back and just talking about wine. The amazing thing about wine is it's very different from almost every other beverage. It's it's made from grapes, and grapes are harvested once a year, and grapes transmit kind of the DNA of what happened, the record of what happened that year in terms of the weather and the growing season and the plants, and then the winemaker takes that and creates something out of it. And unlike any other beverage, like beer, for example, that they create recipes, and they can essentially create the same beer over and over and over again, within a couple week period forever, and make the beer taste exactly the same every time. With wine, we're wildly dependent on what happens in the growing season that year. And there's a difference between the Miramar from 16 and 17 and 18. There's similarities, of course, because they come from the same place. But there's differences, and those differences are beautiful. And we only get one chance per year to miss wine. And there's environmental things that happen, and then there are our own actions that happen on top of that. I mean, we can do a great job, or we can make mistakes. Oh, I wish I would have done that differently. But there's no going back. Like it is what it is. It's kind of like this live performance art. And for me, it's such a special beverage. As I mentioned earlier, it's kind of this snapshot of this time and place, and the people that made the wine in a bottle. And you can't get that in a cocktail or a beer or anything else. And that's for anybody starting off in wine. Like if that idea excites you, then that's a great first step, just to think about what wine is and how it's made.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating when we open like an old bottle, which we do, on special occasions. If you open like a 1949, and you're just like, my God, my parents import. It's like the coolest thing to be like, this hasn't been exposed to oxygen since however
50
many years.
And it came from this small village in
what was
rural
going on?
Italy, and these people, they didn't have TV or like this. Think about what their life was like when they made the bottle of wine.
And that to me is more exciting than, it needs to taste good, but like that to me is the sexy part of that type of wine.
But it's
almost like a little time capsule.
It's the same thing with our wine, today. It's like, we were doing certain things, and there was stuff going on when we made these wines, and it is a snapshot of what we did at that moment in time. Anyway.
So that brings up a really good point. I think as people just try to discover wine, oftentimes a lot of people are focused on, and we've done different tastings and different things with our community, but oftentimes, people their start point is the grocery store.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're in the grocery store, you're obviously exposed to, fairly large labels with distribution and all those kind of things. And I think, we last week we were suggesting, we had a really good suggestion around go find like a local wine store. Like you can find one, you can find one online, you can go in and talk to the person who's running it and give them your budget. You don't have to be on a high level budget, but like, spend what you would spend at the grocery store at a wine store and find people that are kind of more winemakers. So what recommendation would you have for folks as they're starting that journey? And, maybe some people in some of the markets that we serve, and maybe if you're in Missouri, for example, you only have the grocery store as your option. What do you recommend for starting that exploration of wine? And that could be, by the way, find a couple winemakers like Reeve or other friends and try their wines and buy them online. And that's one of the recommendations. Ariel, you can certainly put the link in the in the reminder for the chat. But what would you recommend as people are exploring that first step?
I mean, I do think finding a good local wine shop is a great step. I mean, I still have wine shops that I go to, and I'll walk in and go, what are you interested in? It's maybe slightly different for me because I'm willing to take chances on everything. But what happens at a wine shop, especially if you form a relationship with one, and by form a relationship, I mean just go in there and talk to somebody and introduce yourself and find out the guy or gal's name and just be honest. Just say, hey, I don't know that much about wine. I don't even know what I like, or I had this wine and I kind of like that. Maybe you could show me a few things like that. And like you said, just give them your budget. If it's $15 a bottle, they'll find something for $15 that they think is interesting. And the real benefit is then it's just that transaction. Then you get the wine or a couple bottles of wine, and then you go have them and go back to the same store and find the same guy and say, hey, last time you gave me this, I didn't like that one. It was a little too dry. It the flavors were too dark, or I don't
Way
know.
too natural.
Yeah, it's a little cloudy and funky. It smelled like my baby's diapers. But whatever it is, then that person can say, okay, well, they didn't like that, but they liked this, so I'm going to go in this direction and give them some more of the stuff that I think they'll like. And over time, you'll both explore new things, and you'll have somebody to kind of guide you towards things that fit your palate and your budget. And it's one of the most powerful things you can do, for sure.
All right. So I have a tip for the audience. For those of you in New Orleans, I have the one wine shop that you need to go to. It is called Keefe & Co. It's around the corner from the office. It's less than a 10-minute walk. It's right by, what's the circle? Lee Circle. I know, Scott, you wish Mayor Landrieu had fixed Lee Circle, but he didn't get the name changed. But nonetheless, the statue's not there anymore. But you can go there, and Keefe & Co. will help you. And they will help you with your $15 bottle choices. And they will help you with your $20 bottle choices, and you will love them. And in Newark.
Well, hang on. In Newark.
Cool Vines? What's it called?
Yeah, Cool Vines on the
Cool
first
Vines.
floor. Right next to
down.
right
you don't
next
even
to
have to go into the Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Alec, it's called Keefe & Co. Yes.
And back to New Orleans, any restaurants that folks can find Reeve?
Well, obviously,
you guys,
I was just saying, go to Keefe & Co. to learn your wines. Go ahead, Kelly.
Canal is an awesome spot in New Orleans that carries our wine sometimes.
Yes.
Awesome.
And
last time we were there.
Oh.
Exactly. We'll continue to go back and pursue, as many restaurants and placements as we possibly can. As soon as
our team would love to go to Bacchanal right now. I can tell you that.
Travel ban is over, which leads me to the final segment of what we wanted to kind of work through with you guys. Crisis breeds creativity, just like, constraints breed creativity, and it allows people to take risk. And, when your back's up against the wall, or when things are different, like they are for all of us right now, you might get frozen, you might get energized, you might try new things, you might hunker down, there's all sorts of kind of reactions. But how are you guys reacting? And, put it in the context of anything that's going on, particularly in the wine industry. I see energy out of everything you're doing. But I want you to tell us about it. I want you to tell us about what you're focused on right now.
Yes.
I mean, I've been very energized by this situation.
Noah thrives in crisis mode.
Yeah.
Fires.
I think
recession.
one of the things that's probably relevant to a lot of your members, just by the very nature of your clients, is that I think in times like this, the deck is reshuffled. And I think there are lots of the more dominant players in whatever field you're in that are going to be slower to react. They're more entrenched, and they're actually, in a weird way, they're going to be hurt more. And it creates opportunities. It creates a million opportunities to refine what you're doing, to find a wedge, something you are already that you can kind of expand on, to find some new opportunity. And by being small, you can be nimble and you can move fast. And I think in an environment like this, moving fast is one of the biggest advantages. If you can come up with an idea and execute it tomorrow, you're way ahead of many other sizes of businesses. It takes most businesses much longer than that to decide to do something new and do it. And I think that's one of the things we've been able to do, is come up with the new ideas and execute them like literally within 24 hours. And then I think the second thing.
Will you take orders and drive to New Orleans and deliver them? Because you've been delivering all over the Bay Area.
I'm going to give you that a hard no. That's a hard no.
All right.
We're not letting you do that.
Sorry, Chris.
That's a hard no.
It's a good try.
Terrible idea.
Do you need a buddy?
Although, and this might be a really good time for us to go to New Orleans. I mean, we can't go to any bars or restaurants. We can't do anything except deliver. We can't even go hang out with friends.
You go check in on Launchpad.
We can't do anything.
Canceled.
Canceled. And then I think their huge takeaway for us is that we really, from day one, prioritized our relationship with our customers and clients. Like it was in everything we did, and it was a very important thing to nurture and to have high touch, high quality interactions with people and really form relationships. That has been a huge treasure for us because we've been able to activate those relationships and not just activate them, but to draw on those relationships during this time. And it's kind of amazing because you like spend a lot of time building them and you're not really sure what exactly it means. Like you have it, but you're not sure how to cash those chips in at some later point. But now that this has happened, we have this huge resource that we can use to help shift our business away from some of the other things that are not working into some things that are working. And that's what we've leaned into. We're like, okay, this is the most important thing we were doing before, and now it's doubly important. And so we're doing free local delivery, and we're reaching out to people on the phone just directly to call people and say, hey, how you doing? And we've just been communicating more with people and really drawing on those relationships.
Yeah, we've really tried to knock down the barriers. People can't come to us. So, we're now for the first time ever doing free shipping 4 bottles or more, which shipping wine is very expensive. So, but it's, to us, it's worth it. It's like, we just got to get wine in people's hands.
Get the wine to the people.
Get the wine to the people. And the deliveries have been fascinating. Not only is it obviously it's getting product to somebody, but there's been an interaction, albeit from 6 feet, but people just to know that Noah in his truck drove down their bottles, and he's had cookies and kombucha and t-shirts and chocolate bars waiting for him, and
homemade hand balm. And it's like the first couple of deliveries I made, I didn't realize this, but I got it right away, was this just little interaction that I'm having, even if just like a, hey, here's your wine, and the smile and the thank you, and that was worth more than any of it. It's just another chance to say hi to your customers. And it's really been the most amazing part of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a really interesting point, Noah, which is, well, first of all, we heard that tip from you guys, which was you were calling all your customers and reconnecting and doing that. And we jumped on that and embraced that. We're like, that's exactly right. Like, how are we being part of people's lives?
Now I'm thinking
and that
we
was
should
really,
send them all wine.
We can't. I could.
Later.
Okay.
It's not a bad idea. Just admit it.
It's not a bad idea. Better than writing a check to the landlord. But I think what you're tapping into, which is, it's not that people need wine. I mean, literally, people have plenty of places and outlets to go and find wine, and do that. And
they need that
people who are buying a Reeve wine are not like, oh my God, I like, actually, yeah, good. But it's that connection point, which we're craving. And we're not craving mass audience relationships of being in this random big grouping at a music festival. We're actually craving the physical and emotional connection of another person doing that interaction. And even if it's 6 feet apart or it's a little note on your thing, that feeling is what we're craving, that feeling of physical and communication and connection that comes from that personal. And so I feel like that's what you're tapping into in a weird way of making hand deliveries of your handmade wine. It's like somebody else is there. mean, to be honest, when the UPS guy, like, he now knows us. He waves at us in our car as he goes by. We didn't have that level of relationship with him, but he's looking for a connect too. We're all sort of looking for those normalcy of that relationship. And I love that you're doing it. I wish I had wine to travel around and drive to all you guys.
We might need you on.
We might need more people, so you could be a wine delivery person too. Just send your resume.
Chris would be better. Yeah. He's better. I'm a terrible. I should have asked, who's the worst driver?
I
know you are. I'm running with you too.
Ran into your garage, so
it's okay. The kids were in the car.
Times every time of day when I see a giant dent in my car.
Oh, well, there's ways to be memorable. All right. Should we? We're at time. I know everyone, but no one's leaving. But we need to ask one question about work-life integration. We've talked about the brand, we've talked about that, but why don't you share with us your tips on, so I don't know if you guys know this, we work together and we're married. We also have a baby. We're like, we call it all in. There is only one option, which is the nuclear. And in fact, we thought there was only one option, which was the nuclear option. Apparently, it's the COVID-19 pandemic. So we actually have an out. We get out of this whole situation. But it wouldn't be pretty. Chris would have to live at Bob's. But how are you guys? What are some of your tips for those of us in the world of lifestyle business that are doing amazing work together as partners? Do you have any tips or tricks that would be up your sleeve?
Kelly's showing us right now.
I think we can be honest on this show. I think it's probably one of our weakest areas. It's like it's hard, as you guys know. I mean, we're just like going a million miles an hour, and we have kids and business, and I feel like we're really good at this.
Can I interrupt you, because that's the part of the segment we're in?
Sure.
When you say it's the weakest, it's actually the strongest in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Because we're all in. So, in a way, to value that relationship and the power behind that, because we know each other better than anybody, and we're working together, and all the ins and outs of the kids and the relationship and the personal stuff and the business, which is a big priority, to have a solid foundation of a partner that you can rely on it's very, very rare, and it's very, very valuable. However, it is very, very, is tenuous the right word, where it's that you can be leaning so hard on certain parts of that relationship that you are definitely there's a word I can't find, but you're neglecting other parts.
Well, what I was going to say is, I think overall it works very well. There's some phrase about balance, and I think sometimes it's hard to balance. The balance part is hard.
The balance part is hard.
I think that the collaboration part is high. Like, we can literally wake up in the morning and be like, okay, today we got to do an Instagram post about this, and we got to do an Instagram post about that. And before we get out of bed, we like have a plan for like 5 things. And I sometimes think, like, how would that work? Like, if the person I was a partner with in business wasn't sleeping next to me, like, I'd have to like do this stuff, and then I'd have to call them, and then we'd have to have a whole conversation about this stuff, and I can knock out like 10 things before we're even done brushing our teeth, and it's good. That's good and bad. It's really good in some ways.
It's a good efficiency. The efficiency of it's good. The balance of it's hard, because sometimes I don't want to talk about that when I'm brushing my teeth, and I don't want to talk about it when I'm in bed, So I don't know. I think in this time, of crisis, we'll call it, or opportunity, however, glass half
like
full
it.
or half empty.
That's nice. Crisis and opportunity.
I think obviously we're there's no doubt that we're focused on keeping our business alive. So that's
and our kids alive.
Who are they?
Where are they? Haven't heard.
That's okay. They're fine. They're fine.
Not in school.
But in this time of special moments, it's clear what our priority is, which is keeping our business alive. So that in a way simplifies what's happening here. However, it can't be long term because it's not balanced. And I think that's something we were striving for even before COVID is, how do we create space and more, bring back that more personal, a separation in a good way where he gets to do what he wants to do, I do what I want to do, and then we have time together outside of work. So it's just complicated, man. But it is good.
I think that is the eternal struggle of successful couples who manage work-life integration. And I don't think anybody does it perfectly. I don't know anyone who does. We certainly don't. And when you achieve, but I think you both nailed it, which is, it is about balance.
Yeah.
Right. And we're always sort of seeking balance. And in this time, I can tell you, we are out of balance, right? We've got different things in our heads. We are managing in a crisis scenario, and how we manage in those scenarios is different. And I think we're all learning what's different and how we manage at that time. And so it's refreshing, because I think it's very easy, especially when you're on a show like this, to sort of speak to the sort of things. But I think anyone who's in a married or partnered relationship where they're also doing the work together, they struggle in good times to say, how do we not have work, which we're really passionate about, consume 99% or 90% of our day, and the other 8% is responding to kid needs. Mm-hmm. And the other 2% is being a family. And oh my God, I fucking forgot that actually I'm married to you. And after these kids are gone to college and we sell our winery or our business and we're super successful, we still have to like each other at the end of the day. And we're all striking that balance. And so you're highlighting it, but I think you're doing it. And we're all doing our best. And I think the message I would have to entrepreneurs today is, whether you're doing this with your spouse or now your new spouse at home because you're working from home, be gentle with each other. Be careful with each other. And realize we're all figuring out what these muscles are in crisis, because they're new and they're different and they're kind of crazy. And I mean, my God, your husband's driving around. He's ready to go to New Orleans, deliver some wine.
I think the key there.
Are you going tomorrow? Do you want to board a teardrop?
I think I better leave now if I'm going to make it in time to make the delivery.
But I think the key is crying uncle, communication, and just being like, hey, listen, he did this for me the other day. I was like, I just need some time alone. I gotta go. And so he took the kids and I went to we're staying up at the Reeve property, for those of you who don't know, so we don't live here, but I just went to our house to be alone for 4 hours and just get work done. But it was on my terms, it was my time, it was my work, and it was quiet, which none of us are getting, especially those who are homeschooling children. So it's those moments of when you need to cry uncle and you need to ask for help, you have to do it.
Your partner's there for you.
Yeah.
To pick it up.
Don't be a martyr. So.
Or that much of it anyway.
Yeah.
Unless you really have to.
Unless you have to.
All right. Who's more likely to be the martyr in your relationship?
That's Kelly, you and I. I opened my eyes.
Oh, you did.
All right. All right, before we wrap up, and guys, thank you for bearing with us, and thank you for the audience for the delay on the time. I have a very, very important question. Did you prep them?
No.
You didn't?
No.
Woo, the ducks. I have a very important question. And I'll tell you what Megan Glab's answer to this question was.
Oh, no.
I think
nobody can follow Megan Glab.
What's a great pairing that you like to enjoy? And her answer was onion dip and champagne.
Ooh.
Chips and dip. Champagne.
Amazing.
What is your pairing? And it could be a pandemic pairing if that makes it easy.
It will not be as exciting as Noah's, and I'll give him some time to think.
Oh, God.
Pinot Noir and popcorn.
Ooh,
I like that. Yeah.
Pinot and popcorn.
Any flavor, like the Sonoma popcorn with the curry flavor, or just straight up popcorn butter?
Straight up microwave popcorn. Try it out.
Microwave popcorn.
Of course.
So one of my favorite pairings has to do with the reason that we make Riesling, is that we were at the Slanted Door, which is a Vietnamese restaurant, and back in the day they used to have all Riesling. They didn't pay any mind to the fact that nobody could pronounce any of the German and Austrian labels, that the average person had no idea what any of these wines were. They just made the decision that these wines go the best with the food, and so we're going to have a menu full of Riesling. And so for me, like when I first had that experience of Vietnamese food and Riesling, it just like blew my mind. It's like a real combination between sweet and acid and sour, salt, and Riesling can do those same dynamics.
Perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Oh, it's so quiet.
I know.
Why did you guys do that?
Why is Hazel so quiet?
Is it because I'm not there?
She was barking the whole time in the house. We had to let her out of the house and send her over to the ducks. I don't know what just happened, but probably someone attacked her. Or she ran into a bowl and she's freaking out.
Kalara and Harper are not too far behind. We told them we'd be over at 6:30.
Anyway.
All right. Thank you guys so much for being on today.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a quick one minute recap for Ariel. It was such a pleasure to have Kelly and Noah from Reeve Wines. I think we learned a little bit about achieving balance, but I learned a lot about how important it is for entrepreneurs to think about what their core is and how they brand from the inside and make sure that every element of their experience is really conveying what's in their heart and what's in their dream. And when they actually care about what's in their glass and they make an amazing product, that becomes an amazing company. I think that's what we can learn from Kelly and Noah today. And I can't wait to have them back again to talk more about how they're really succeeding and thriving in a post-COVID work-life integration world.
Awesome.
Post-COVID will be great.
Thanks, guys.
Let's get t-shirts.
Yeah.
Post-COVID. Love you guys so much.
Right.
Yeah.
Love you guys too.
Can't wait to see you guys someday.
Someday.
In real life.